Well, I mean, the first thing to say is finally, right? VoLTE adoption needs to happen. VoLTE migration needs to happen. And there's a couple of reasons for that. A couple basic reasons are, first of all, everyone wants to free up the spectrum from the old 2G and 3G services and use it for LTE, use it for 5G. It just makes more sense. It's more efficient use of the spectrum and they can get more value from it. Second, they won't have to support, once they move off of these circuit switch voice networks, they won't have to support all these big hardware boxes sitting there. I mean, circuit switch voice is still largely a hardware-based thing, and you have to have people who know how to maintain it. It's energy hungry. By today's standards, it's not very efficient. So that's a huge cost thing that they can get rid of on the OpEx side. But it's not just about getting rid of circuit switch. And that's why I think we need to convince people that they need to go towards VoLTE more rapidly. Once you move towards an IP-based, largely virtual and cloudified on the back end type of voice network, you can start to use it to develop new services, to come up with something that's higher revenue, higher margin than your typical voice call. Yeah, I think generative AI is obviously the big AI use case to integrate with calling, just because generative AI is by its nature interactive, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a chat bot. It could be video, it could be music, but it's generating a response. It's interactive. It's often natural language. I'll tell you something that is directly related to this happened to me this morning. I came back to my hotel room in the middle of the day. The poor house cleaner wanted to obviously clean my room, but I had just come in. She didn't speak English, I didn't speak Chinese. So we used a translation app, which is based on generative AI. So I could tell her, I'll just be here 10 minutes and then I'll leave. That is the kind of thing that you can integrate with the calling channel, and it will be even more useful, because first of all, it'll probably be a little bit faster once we have data channel support in play. But also the nice thing about integrating AI with the call channel is that it's actually easier to switch from use case to use case, from app to app, than switching multiple apps on your phone. So everyone can use simultaneous translation. There are obviously other things that can be done too, more sorts of entertainment types of application. One thing that we're seeing a lot here is in China is what they call fun calling, which is you use an avatar that kind of looks like you. I don't want to believe that my avatar looks a lot like me. I'm much more handsome. But you can come up with all kinds of video and animation and translation. You can do call summaries after an important call. You can just say, okay, give me a summary of what we talked about. What are the real action items? And Gen AI can do all that. Once you combine that with just a normal sort of phone call type of experience, there's all kinds of ways you can go for both the consumer side and the business side. Yeah. Well, I would say first thing to do is, if you haven't gone over to VoLTE yet, come up with a plan to go over to VoLTE. Now, there's at least one problem there that people have to deal with, which is that our roaming system, so going from one country to another country and being able to place a call, is still largely based on 3G. It's largely based on circuit switched. And so you have to come up with a plan to handle that roaming functionality. There are various ways to do it, probably actually just a couple of ways to do it that vendors are experimenting with. But roaming is both something that your customers expect, and voice can be a really critical channel when you're abroad and you need something quickly, or you need to get in contact with home. And it can be a significant revenue generator for operators. So when operators are coming up with their voice migration strategy to IP voice to VoLTE, they have to make sure that they have a roaming solution, and that's a special project. That's something that they have to discuss with their vendor. Beyond that, you can start to think about how to come up with more products. based on voice. VoLTE, as I said before, opens up new product, new service generation. So it's not just a hygiene factor. It's not just replicating the old style of calling in a modern network. You can do things like China is doing with new calling. You can put through all of this video content, these services like the translation, and create a new ecosystem around voice calling that you just could not do before you got off the circuit switch to old voice.